So, hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Samuel Wright, joined by Mike Harniman and Huddersfield Town fan Oliver Eaton. And we're going to go over the Premier League results and all the big stories from the weekend and a couple of other details as well in the footballing world. Firstly, starting on Friday evening, Southampton 1, Aston Villa 0. Turned out it was the last game in charge of Aston Villa for Dean Smith. Mike, was this the right decision from Aston Villa's point of view?
It's quite an interesting one when you look at it from Dean Smith and Aston Villa. They've got a really, really good squad. Obviously, they lost Jack Grealish to Man City in the summer, but they did invest really, really well. They brought in obviously Buendia. They brought in some real quality players, and to give Dean Smith a bit more time, to be honest, I thought was something they might have been able to do, but they are on a bit of a sort of downward spiral and a bit of a sort of run of poor results. So when you look at it that way, you can kind of see why they've done it. But, I'd have probably given them until probably about Christmas sort of time and then see from there.
In terms of Southampton, 3 wins out of 4 now for them, Mike, and all them wins been by a 1-0 scoreline. Are they turning a bit of a corner again under Ralph Hasenhüttl?
You never know with Southampton. They've got a good squad themselves as well. But, there is sort of enough about them to know, they'll certainly be fine staying up. There's worse teams than them this season, so they'll be fine. They won't go down, but they do have, a surprise result here and there as well. So, for every 1-0 win, there's a 9-0 loss.
Oliver, obviously, I'll ask you as well about Dean Smith, of course, has left Villa after about 3 years and just over 3 years in charge, I believe it is. What's your take on the decision?
It's an interesting one because you would have looked at their first season they came up when they were struggling. They just scraped it through, and he obviously stayed in the job. I think he was allowed to build, and he built a good team, but he built it around Grealish. And I think there's been a lot of stick back towards Grealish since his sacking, and you can understand. But it was a really tough job for Dean Smith then to try and build the team away from the kind of Grealish model, because as we know, he's one of them players, certainly for a team like Villa, that you could build players and build a team around. And when you've lost that key target man, it was always going to be hard. And Villa, the 16th at the moment, they've got 3 wins out of 11. Compared to some of the other teams who've not done as bad yet, it's one of them. Are the owners looking at a long term here where they want to keep Villa as an established club in the Premier League, or are they wanting a quick fix? It's an interesting, and I am actually interested to see who they go for. But I think out of all the sackings, a bit harsh, but it might have been. I think it was just a too hard job for Dean Smith, really.
Yeah, and Adam Armstrong scored his first goal for Southampton at St Mary's. It's only his second goal for the club in general. Oliver, you watch Championship a lot. He's a man who scored 28 goals for Blackburn Rovers last season, and a Blackburn team who finished in the bottom half for that matter. Do you think that we're yet to see the best of him in a Southampton shirt?
Well, he was very good at Blackburn. I know throughout last season, when I was on your Championship podcast, we've mentioned him as a player to watch. He's got the goals. I think you see a lot of talent from the Championship jump up to the Premier League and not necessarily make as big of a splash, shall we say, when they come up. He's got his first goal now, and that needs to be on him a lot of confidence. They need to see what works for him and try and work to his strengths. I think he obviously is not going to be scoring 24 in the Premier League, but I think if he could get the right service and he could work out and get the confidence for himself to keep scoring, he could become, a good asset for Southampton. And, maybe he could be a good replacement for Ings.
Yep, we're going to move on to Saturday's game now. And we start with the early kickoff in the Manchester derby. Mike, obviously, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is still manager right now of Manchester United, but you do feel like he's on very much borrowed time at the moment. And this was a pretty comfortable win for Manchester City at Old Trafford.
Yeah, he's under lots of pressure now, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. When you look at it, of course, they were beaten by Liverpool, and then they beat Tottenham. And of course, that saw the end for Nuno Espirito Santo last weekend. And then obviously he was replaced. And then that was the game of, what was it, the El Sakiko, wasn't it? That was sort of known as really sort of, by some people. And it was Ole that kept his job on that occasion. And then obviously they come back, and Manchester City were, as you say, comfortable and convincing against them, really. without having to be at their very, very best. And, you know, it's a big ask for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You know, what do Man United fans want this season? Do they want top four? Do they want a title challenge? That's the interesting thing, really, because from Man U and from their fans, I think, you know, as long as they're in Europe, it's a successful season.
Yep, obviously, as for Man City, are you still expecting them to be right up there this season? I'm not sure if you expect to win the league or not, but they'll certainly be in the race, you'd imagine.
Yeah, I got them to finish second personally. I got Chelsea to go on and win the title. I like the look of Chelsea under Tuchel this year, but I do think City, you know, with Jack Grealish, with the likes of Gabriel Jesus, Raheem Sterling as well, and players like that, there's still plenty of quality about them. And, you know, I did put them to win a trophy. So I do think it'll be a successful season for Pep under, you know, maybe not winning the title, but they'll win a trophy this season for sure.
Yep. Oliver, what were your thoughts on this game anyway? Obviously, Man United thoroughly outclassed really by their City neighbours. Obviously, Man City just kind of took the game by storm really. As the early own goal didn't help them. But yeah, comfortable win for Man City, I guess you can say. And the pressure is mounting on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that's for sure.
To be fair, I was surprised he kept his job after the Liverpool game. I mean, of that kind of magnitude of the rivalry, and to lose like that. You know, I was convinced he was going to be gone the day after. He wasn't. We got to the Tottenham game. And, you know, even that Tottenham game, you sense that Tottenham was still going to lose that game. It's a very strange situation with Man United, because you can't work out if the clinging on to the past too much. And I think, you know, that era of the Ferguson days, I think that it's obviously gone now. It's quite clear. It's been, what is it, nearly 10 years since Ferguson left now, if not more. They need to move on, but they need to move on with a manager who could take the talent they've got. I mean, they've got Cristiano Ronaldo and that talent there. They need to get a manager who actually works better tactically on the level of your Klopps, on the level of Conte. I can't see him surviving the season, and it's a strange one because you'll probably see United now go on a run. You know, if they've got slightly easier fixtures, they'll probably the keys to get 6 wins, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's safe in his job. But if you're not winning the key games, as I think he said there about where they're aiming for in the league, a team like Man United, they have to be aiming for the top. They can't just let the rest of the top 6, a big 6, go for it. They have to. I can't see him keeping his job at all. But again, it all comes down to what Man United's board want, because it's obvious they've gone this far now without doing the chop. This would be the most logical time to do it with the international break. But again, your options have now gone, because Conte's, who was linked to him, has obviously gone to Tottenham. So I don't know. It's all Ed Woodward and his board now to decide that.
Yep, Mike, the next managerial sacking that happened this weekend was Daniel Farke from Norwich City. That came after a win, surprisingly, a 2-1 win away to Brentford. Obviously, Norwich's first win of the season, but they're still down the bottom of the table. Yeah, what were your thoughts on this? And do you think it's the right decision for Norwich?
It's quite an interesting one to obviously do it on the back of getting the 3 points as well. You know, I think there was probably talks within the week that Daniel Farke was going to be relieved of his duties, you know, having the international break, as Oliver just mentioned a minute ago, to kind of, you know, look for a new manager, unless they've got somebody under their belt already, and know what they're going to do. But yeah, I think, you know, Daniel Farke, maybe he already knew and then wanted to go out with a win, but it's a bit of a strange one to sack him on the back of getting the 3 points. And actually, I thought Norwich were good against Brentford as well. I thought they were fully sort of deserved of those 3 points, and it's a bit of a shame really, because obviously he's got the highs of, you know, winning the game, and then probably within about an hour he's like no longer manager again. So yeah, it's a little bit of a tricky one really, but I do think it was probably, you know, the international break coming this weekend would have played a part in that, and I think he probably knew anyway.
I mean, as for Brentford, obviously had such a good start to the season. Brentford, that 2-0 win over Arsenal on the opening day. They're not actually won a home game since, though, Brentford, and they are starting to slowly fall down the table. Do you fear they could be dragged into a relegation battle?
It's quite interesting with Brentford. I do think that there's, you know, a couple of sides that might even be a little bit worse off than them. I like Ivan Toney. I think Ivan Toney's going to score him a load of goals this season. I do really rate him a lot. Is it Buemo as well? I like him, the other striker. They've got plenty of quality. I think they signed that guy from Celtic as well, the centre back, who I really like. So, yeah, I do think they'll just about be okay. They might finish sort of one place outside the relegation zone, but that for them is a success.
Yeah, Oliver, your take, please, on Daniel Farke's sacking.
I think, as we said, I think it was probably going to happen regardless of the result. I don't think that Farke probably knew. I mean, surely after the relegation 2 years ago, and that he must have thought or had doubts, but I don't know if he saw it coming this week, because he was out after the game doing his interview like normal. And normally, if there's a sacking imminent, they don't do the post-match stuff most of the time. But Norwich were at a crossroads. I mean, the start of the season, Paul, fine, they got the first win, but the damage has already been done, really, that start. And they always say, if you don't, certainly teams like Norwich, newly promoted teams, if you don't make that strong beginning to build up those points, it's always going to be a downhill battle. So this is obviously a last roll, a roll of the dice, trying to get something. You have to look at it as, if they've got the first win here, would that have then kickstarted the momentum for Norwich? I don't know. Unfortunately, Farke's track record in the Premier League, it doesn't look good at the moment. So only time will tell if it's a good decision. But it was sod's law for him in the end of the day. When you first came in, 20 Premier League games, and you get the chop. But it's Premier League for you. It's how it is, isn't it?
Yep, and as for Brentford, Oliver, our same question I asked Mike. Could Brentford be dragged into a battle in your opinion, or do you think they're still going to be okay this season?
Getting a bad run in the Premier League, it's hard to get out of. I think it only takes that one game to provide a spark, as I was just saying about Norwich there. They have the benefit of having that good start, and fine, it's what they've got 12 points out of 11. It's averaging just over 1 point a game. It's not, as stats go, it's not staying up kind of points. But I think Brentford are currently just on that little, I don't want to say seesaw, but they just got 1 foot in safety-ish. Not saying they're going to stay up, but they're on that balance now between the season going in a downward spiral or kind of building it back up. And it's going to be interesting for them, certainly before Christmas now. It's crucial for them to pick up a good 10 to 12 points now before Christmas, because this will be really crucial coming into the final run-in.
Absolutely. Mike, you said you've had Chelsea to win the Premier League this season. They had a bump in the road on Saturday, a 1-1 draw, a very surprising 1-1 draw at home to Burnley. What were your thoughts on this game? And Chelsea really paid for missing loads of chances.
Yeah, they had, I think it was something like 20, 25 shots at goal, and they obviously only scored the one. But I thought Burnley were really, really good. They defended really well. And actually, they could have nicked it right at the end as well. Of course, Matty Vydra did get them the goal, and I think it was Vydra that almost scored the goal right at the end as well to give them a 2-1 win. And I'm sure there'd be quite a lot of people that would be loving that. My mate JB in particular, who's a massive Burnley fan, he'd love that if they won 2-1. He was sort of jumping up and down and singing the praises of Sean Dyche. The fact that they managed to get a draw against Chelsea, but I thought that's a really good point for them on the road. I had them to struggle, but if they can go to places like Stamford Bridge and get results like that, then they could prove people like me wrong, and that's that's good for them. Under Sean Dyche to go on and do that. But yeah, Chelsea, as you say, they missed a hatful of chances, and maybe if they had Werner, Lukaku, it might have been different. But a Sean Dyche Burnley, you never know. They were very well organised, and I'm sure they would have been anyway either way.
Yeah, Oliver, I want to ask where you're actually standing on the title race at this moment in time. The good news for neutrals is no one's really running away with it right now. Everyone is dropping points. Obviously, I think other than obviously Man City, who did lose to Palace last week, everyone's dropped points recently, to be honest, in the last couple of games, though. Liverpool, obviously, this weekend as well, and Chelsea. So right now, what's your take on the title race?
It's very tasty. I've got the table here, and there's, it's just 4 points separating the top 4 at the moment. You have your usual candidates who you expect to be up there, but then you've got the excitement of West Ham. They're picking up big points. Certainly, we'll come to it in a moment, I'm sure. But it's really turned. Wow, Arsenal are fifth. I've only just noticed. It's good, as you said, from neutral. I think you go to see, certainly from Christmas, you will see your usual stronger teams, your Chelseas, your Man Cities. I'm sure Liverpool will recover. Even your Manchester United, they'll be up there. They'll be challenging, and it wouldn't surprise me if we look back at this period of season. This is where probably the title's been decided. These little drop points here and there, because it could easily switch. They could all go and win, their remaining fixtures. So it's going to be interesting, and it's good to see after a couple of years now of kind of domination by either your Man City or then your Liverpool. It's good to see. I mean, everyone loves a good close title fight, and we all like underdogs as well, like your West Ham, Brighton. We're floating around for a bit, so it's exciting. I can't wait to see what between now and Christmas it could be all different again.
Yep, Mike, with being an Arsenal fan, you must have a real big soft spot for Patrick Vieira, and you must be a big admirer of the job he's currently doing at Crystal Palace. Another win at the weekend, 2-0 at home to Wolverhampton Wanderers, and Vieira's probably exceeded everyone's expectation right now, doing a fine job at Selhurst Park.
Yeah, he's a fantastic manager. He was a fantastic player in his day as well, and he's taken that into management. He took it into France, and he did well over in France. And then he's obviously now gone to Crystal Palace, and he's picking up some good results. And obviously, the result against City, they were everyone's everyone was surprised by that one, I should say. And then they were able to continue it on as well. I do like the look of their side as well. The likes of Edwards, who they brought in from Celtic. I really rate him. With sort of Will Zaha, they've got I think it's Eze to come back as well. So they've got a really good side, sort of all through. And actually, on the back of, I think it was last season, they lost about 20 odd players. Really able to build that sort of new mold really quickly, and sort of gel really, really quick. And that's, a big thing in the Premier League. And yeah, I do like Vieira, and he will be manager of Arsenal one day. You can count that. You can clip that. You can do whatever. Like, he will manage Arsenal one day.
No, he's right now. I think he's got a very good chance of doing so. That's a good point. Oliver, I'll bring you to that game as well. We're going to talk about Wolves a little bit. Especially Bruno Lage, obviously big shoes to fill with Nuno Espirito Santo. Did a great job at Wolves. Maybe went a bit stale towards the end, but overall certainly did a good job. So far, Wolves have had quite a good season, but fell a little bit short here. This is two teams, of course, who have been in really good form. What was your take on it, and what's your take on both of these teams' seasons?
Well, certainly Wolves. In fact, both teams, Wolves and Crystal Palace, at the beginning of the season, I predicted them to be, making up the relegation battle. Personally, I don't know. I don't know if it was Vieira. I didn't think he was going to do as good of a start as he has, but it's there in black and white. The Crystal Palace currently 10th, and you can't look past them only having 2 losses so far this season after 11 games. Wolves as well, they surprised me. I didn't actually realise they had climbed up the table so far. Currently sat in 8th. And I was wondering whether Wolves would kind of maintain that. They had a flair, an attacking flair to them, didn't they, under Nuno? And it's obvious that they've found that. I think Jimenez returning back from injuries helped as well, and they've found those key players what are getting them the goals. And in the Premier League, certainly this season, where there's a lot of teams what are not picking up points very quickly at this point, I think that's crucial just to keep them well afloat. And yeah, I think the result's probably fair in the end of the day.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm going to go to you next as well. Brighton and Hove Albion 1, Newcastle United 1. We saw actually a goal. Lewis Dunk, I believe it was, going goal at the end of this game as well, due to Robert Sanchez's red card. But obviously the main talking point now is Eddie Howe has been hired by Newcastle United, who obviously had the big takeover recently. Your thoughts on the game and the appointment of Eddie Howe, please?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting to go with Eddie Howe, someone that's been out of the game for some time. Obviously, his last job was at Bournemouth. So it's going to be interesting to see how he can get that Newcastle side performing. The pluses are obviously he knows Ryan Fraser, he knows Callum Wilson. I think there's 1 or 2 others as well that he had at Bournemouth, so he can get the best out of them. Then so if he can get the best out of them, then I think they'll be able to go on a little bit of a run maybe. But The whole thing really with them is how they invest in January. Whether they go big and try and chuck loads of money at it straight away, or whether they wait until next season to see what league they're in, and then go from there. But it's a good point for them, really. I thought, for most of the game, I thought Brighton were going to go on and win it, but then obviously Isaac Hayden, former Arsenal youth man, scored the equaliser that day, and it was a little bit happier times for Eddie Howe, who was obviously there watching on. But yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting for them. It's about January and what they do, whether they sort of chuck the money at it straight away, or whether there's the players out there, for them as well, to actually be able to sort of go on and do that, or whether players would want to come to them in January as well. It depends where they are in the table, whether that the money will turn players' heads, or whether it's the fact that Newcastle might be in the relegation zone, which will put some players off who they could maybe get next season, just knowing they're a Premier League club.
Yep. Oliver asked him the same question. Obviously, the game, 1-1 draw. Well, the way Brighton have started the season and the way Newcastle have, it's probably a disappointing result for Brighton. But Eddie Howe is now the Newcastle manager. What are your thoughts on that as well?
I think Mike got it spot on with his analysis of the manager appointment. Newcastle, they're at a weird situation now, obviously, to sack the manager. And it's a case of they're in the relegation zone. They've obviously got this massive funding potentially, which, we expect them to utilise. Do they get a short-term person in to secure them in the Premier League and then they could build? Or do they bring in someone now to do their long-term? Now, Eddie Howe is definitely a long-term manager. We saw it at Bournemouth. He built them up. He established them, certainly before it tailored off in the Premier League. I'm not sure. I think Eddie Howe's a really good manager. I'm sure he'll do good at Newcastle, but just given that context of the potential funding, that I just don't know if it's the right appointment for them if they're trying to stay up at. I'm not so sure, but again, coming to the game, a good point for Newcastle for sure, but they're still without a win. They need to break that duck out. Obviously Eddie Howe's now started. He's got the international break to build up that, so it's one of them again. We'll see at Christmas, but as it stands, it all depends. It's just a massive end to the season for Eddie Howe to establish Newcastle and where they stand.
Yeah, certainly a big appointment, that one. We'll have to see how that one goes. Also, Mike, first game in charge in the Premier League, at least for Antonio Conte yesterday. A 0-0 draw at Goodison Park against Everton. Not the best game, but I guess a point away at Everton's not really a bad result. What were your thoughts on this?
See, yeah, when it's a wounded Everton as well. Of course, Everton were beaten by Watford 5-2. So it's interesting to obviously, to go to the second game after, not the second game, sorry, in fact, it was the second game for Conte, wasn't it? Because obviously he played midweek Tottenham as well. So it's quite an interesting one for him to have his first game there at Goodison Park. And I didn't see much of the game. I don't think there was an awful lot really that happened. Harry Kane was a bit of a shadow of himself yet again. Still hasn't found that form yet for Tottenham. That was there for England and for Tottenham last season. But as I said, a wounded Everton is kind of a bit like a wounded Liverpool, and I'm worried when it comes to Arsenal, because we've got Liverpool next. But for Tottenham, is a decent point for them. And Everton, I think they just wanted to get a point of, at the very least, so that they didn't lose yet again on the back of that 5-2 to Watford, because everyone knows what that game was like. I think they were 2-1 up and they conceded, the rest of their goals within about 12, 13-minute period. So to hold on and get the 0-0 was, what they wanted to do come the end of that game, I think.
Yeah, Oliver, I'll ask you about that game as well. Obviously not the best game of football, but the talking point was, of course, it was Conte's first Premier League game in charge of Spurs. Also want to ask as well about Oliver, what do you make of the, Nuno sacking and Conte appointment there?
I think it was very clear Nuno was out of its depth at Tottenham. It was funny because it worked, didn't it? If you remember going into the first international break, Tottenham top. Sorry to mention it, Mike, but obviously Arsenal bottom. I just had to put that in there. But
that's fine. You can mention it. Obviously, we beat them, so it's fine. And we're above them by 4 points now.
And you're above them now, anyway. I think the injuries obviously killed it off for Nuno. Harry Kane not firing on any cylinders. Also, killed it off for him. But yeah, the fans very quickly turned against him, and obviously they were going for his head, and he was beheaded, wasn't he? So good. I think it's good bringing in Conte. He obviously knows the Premier League. He has won it. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to win it with Tottenham because I don't think anyone can, but it's good. They needed someone with that strong. They've got the players, and it's very similar to how I was on about Manchester United, and that's why he was obviously linked to them. They need one of their managers to utilize every player, and it's a good thing for the good appointment, shall I say. They just need to work on that relationship again between Son and Kane, or bring in Dele Alli again, build his form up. They've got the team there. They just need to overcome this injury crisis, what they have had. I think they're coming out of it a bit now. It's going to be interesting, and obviously in the Champions League they've got the win, so they can win games. So.
Yeah, and we're going to move on to Leeds United versus Leicester City next. I had the privilege of commentating on this game, and Harvey Barnes' goal really was something special, Mike. A 1-1 draw. Obviously, Leicester did have a game in midweek, and you can tell they were a little bit fatigued at times. But as for Leeds, though, just struggling a little bit at the moment to get that winning run together. And yeah, a 1-1 draw. What did you make of this?
Yeah, I think Leeds are just getting some players back from injury themselves as well. I did like Harvey Barnes' goal, as you mentioned. That was a real proper good hit on that one. Keeper had absolutely no chance. But, you know, I like Leeds. I think Leeds are doing okay this season. I saw them last week. I think it was a week before last in the flesh when they played Arsenal in the Carabao Cup, and Arsenal knocked them out that day. But, yeah, I think that, you know, it's an interesting game, that one. I think Leicester might be a little bit unlucky not to get the 3 points, but yeah, Leeds, you know, I think they're just looking for any points that they can at the moment, because they're obviously struggling towards the bottom end of the table as well. And you know, it's a good point for Bielsa's men. But yeah, Leicester, you know, definitely scored probably the goal of the weekend.
Yep. Oliver, your take on this game, please. Obviously, Leeds, you know, they've played well, through really good intensity, but only come away with a draw. It's been the story of their season, really, Leeds. A lot of draws so far. As for Leicester, they weren't at their best, and obviously did have a game in midweek, but could have won, of course. Ademola Lookman had his goal ruled out as well by VAR. What would you take on this game?
It's an interesting fixture because, as you said, Leeds have not had the best of forms, which is nice to see as a Huddersfield fan. It's obviously a big result for Leeds, actually, because Leicester are a very, very tricky side normally to break it down, and certainly to get results against. It's one of them, isn't it? Sometimes, certainly with Leeds, they do tend to dominate a lot of games, but they struggling to score a lot, and that's one thing they benefited from last year, and that's where they picked up the points. They managed to outscore their opponents. We saw, you know, a lot of big scores in games they played, and there's just something this season, whether it's just still burnout from last season or they're just being found out, that it's not really working for them this season. And of course, I think, was it a win against Norwich? Is that what kickstarted their kind of form, or they've got a win recently anyway? And as I was saying earlier, all it takes is that one win and you can start building a bit of a momentum together. So they'll be really happy with that result, unless they look really into it and see that, you know, tended to dominate in places. But it's a bad 2 points dropped for Leicester in terms of where they should really be. But no, big point for Leeds, and they'll probably look to definitely build on top of that after the break.
Mike, we're going to move on to Arsenal now, to your delight. As despite Aubameyang's penalty miss, which was a good save actually by Ben Foster, it was a 1-0 win, and Emile Smith-Rowe, having a fine season at the moment, got the winning goal. And Arsenal, like Oliver said, in 5th place, which is surprising for a lot of people when they currently look at the table. You've got to give Arteta a lot of credit. He's really turning it around at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. You have to give Arteta a lot of credit. I wasn't his biggest fan. I didn't want him originally. I wanted somebody with a bit more experience, but you know, 100 games for him at the weekend as well. So obviously he's doing something right to even get to that milestone. But yeah, I like, you know, the look of our squad. We've got real talent. Obviously, Aaron Ramsdale keeping a lot of clean sheets. Bukayo Saka obviously had that one disallowed as well. Smith-Rowe is in. I think that was 3-3 for Smith-Rowe now. Aubameyang, you know, yes, he missed a penalty, but I think he worked pretty hard. I think he was working maybe a little bit too hard for that goal. because I think Odegaard put one into the back of the net as well when he kind of just got a toe. Well, would have gone into the back of the net and he got a toe on it and it would have gone in otherwise anyway. And we would have won 2-0. But I think Aubameyang just wanted to be a little bit selfish and a little bit greedy and get himself his own goal. But yeah, I'm really impressed with how we're performing lately. 8, unbeaten in the league, 10 in all competitions, I should say. And we've got a couple of interesting games after the international break as well. Quite difficult. And it all starts against a wounded Liverpool, as I said. So it's quite, a bit of a worry. But at the moment, it might be a good time to play Liverpool as well. The fact that they lost, we're certainly one of the form sides, if not the form side in the league. So, yeah, I'm sort of quite enjoying my time at the moment as an Arsenal fan. Last couple of months, anyway.
Yeah, Oliver, I'll ask the same from you, but I'll also ask from a Watford point of view as well. Obviously, it's probably expected to be in a relegation battle under Claudio Ranieri. What were your thoughts on the game and obviously both team seasons going forward?
Yeah, well, on Arsenal, they've obviously turned the season around. They've found that momentum. They've found what clicks. And on Smith Rowe, I mean, obviously, him being at Huddersfield Town, he was a talent for us. And I'm just so happy to see him getting that time and, showing Arsenal what he's about and showing the Premier League and soon England what he's about. It's good to see Arsenal. And I think, as you say, going on for the season, it's a big game against Liverpool. I don't think there's ever a good time to play Liverpool, even a wounded one. I mean, it's going to be an interesting one to see where Arsenal are at, actually, because if they get a result against Liverpool, then you need to start looking at Arsenal as maybe a threat for the top 4. Who knows? Maybe even a title charge. As for Watford, it's a tricky one for Ranieri. He's got Fresh in his first game, then thrashed Everton in his second game, and then he needs to definitely work on getting the results against the teams around him. If he does that, they'll be safe, I think. But a big task for him ahead. But I think Ranieri will probably be just trying to hop along, try not get sacked, and try and get to the January transfer window. And I think he's got to be looking for options there to just establish more the defence and to get him more into his way of playing. And he's got a good CV in the Premier League, I think. So I think it's a big couple months now for Watford for him to keep his job, should we say? Because it's not an easy job to stay as a Watford boss.
And Mike, I'll also the final Premier League game of the weekend was West Ham United 3, Liverpool 2. A cracking game at the London Stadium, and unfortunately for Alisson Becker, it was one to forget for him. But what a win for West Ham, who just keep on going.
Yeah, West Ham have been excellent. They continued on their form from last season. Really impressive win for them. Really, really good 3 points on the board. Surprising as well. But, I'll take that because it means we can still be the only side to West Ham. We'll thank you for that by getting 6 points off you this season, hopefully. But I like the look of West Ham this season. I think they're going to be really strong. They'll be up there and challenging for European places. And if they can go on and do that against Liverpool and maybe do that against other teams as well, then it might be a bit of a surprise. They could actually break the top 4, and that'd be great if they did for the neutrals as well.
Yeah, Oliver, I'll ask you the same as well. Big win, obviously, for West Ham, but a day to forget for Alisson. But you've got to give a lot of credit to David Moyes, obviously. Really saw his career go downhill after leaving Everton. Man United, obviously, Real Sociedad and Sunderland. Never really got going at any of them clubs, but he's really rejuvenated his career, though, at West Ham United.
It's good to see, isn't it? And you've he's been given the time. I mean, I think, if I remember well, he had a small stint at West Ham. And he went because they brought in Mancini, didn't they?
Pellegrini.
Not Mancini, Pellegrini, that's it. Yeah, sorry, yeah. But the fact that they went back to him shows that they had that connection there, and he's obviously utilised that. He's got that way of playing. They're very, very, very dangerous on the counter-attack, and we saw that. They damaged Liverpool. They damaged Aston Villa on the counter-attack as well in the previous game. And it's good to see. They've obviously got the bond between the manager and players. They've got that feel-good factor. And certainly for the fans, it's there. They've got the final filling, or at least making the Olympic Stadium fitting to the ground now. They've actually filled it. which they didn't have. So it's good to see that feel-good factor goes a long way in teams' momentum. So I think they'll just keep going until they hit that. They'll hit a block at some point, I'm sure. But it's good for them. A team like West Ham, they deserve to be fighting up there.
And also, final question for you both. I'm going to ask for your Premier League player and team of the week, please.
It's quite an interesting one. I think team of the week, you have to give it to Burnley for going and getting the job against Liverpool, getting a draw. Although West Ham is another shout as well. I'm going to give it to Burnley personally for getting their draw against Chelsea. Player of the week, that's an interesting one as well. Player of the week, I'm going to give it to Maitland-Niles. He come in, Thomas Partey was out injured, and he put in probably a man of the match performance, to be honest, against Watford. So, yeah, Maitland-Niles, I'm going to give it to one of my own. I think he was, he come in, did a job, did well.
Excellent. Oliver?
Yeah, I think you have to give it to West Ham. They were facing a Liverpool side who, they consistently show the dangerous side. They won 3-2. I mean, they ended I think, was that the game where Liverpool go break the unbeaten record for themselves?
25 games, yeah. 25 games.
Yeah.
They've come in against that kind of momentum context, and they've got a brilliant result against Liverpool. Player of the week, I mean, you have to give it to the new Brighton goalkeeper, right?
Lewis Dunn.
I'll end on that note.
No, well, that's excellent, guys. But that is all we've got time for this evening anyway on the Premier League Weekend Review. Thank you very much for joining me, Mike and Oliver. Hope everyone has enjoyed the show, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, mate.